Hi, it's Megan. I'm here today to talk to you about Educating for Human Greatness. It's a chapter in Turning Points by Lynn Stoddard. How many of you thought you were inferior based on the reading, writing, and math that you were taught in school? You don't have to raise your hands, just think about it. We're the ones that made it. We're sitting here, successful in school systems for 18 plus years. Now think about your students. Think about whose hands would go up in your class. Lynn tells the story of Tony, who without a doubt would have raised his hand. Tony finds it difficult to speak in complete sentences, but can play a piece of music on demand from memory and sings in rich baritone. When human greatness is overlooked, when students feel compelled to raise their hand at the question, "Do you feel inferior?" Lynn Stoddard would say, and I would agree, that education has failed. Lynn's story, as he tells it, begins in 1973 when he was 41 years old. Lynn worked for 36 years as a teacher and a principal in Utah, and in the mid-1970s became a change maker. Lynn was pushed into action by the Back to Basics movement in the States. Back to Basics champions phonetics as a way for children to unlock reading. Nonsense syllables would be drilled over and over again to practice these phonetics. Lynn accused the Back to Basics movement of making reading the business behind elementary education. The problem with the business of learning, with using commercial programs in classrooms, is that it allows no room for individuality and for students to be themselves. Lynn proposes that rather than seeing reading, writing, and math as an end goal in education, you should see it as a means to an end. Reading and writing are just tools in educating for human greatness. He uses the example of spelling. I think we all remember in elementary school memorizing "beautiful" for a spelling test on Friday afternoon. 10 out of 10 was the goal. Memorizing and then promptly forgetting those spelling words to make room for the next batch was the goal. This happened because we were all storing beautiful in our short-term memories. I still don't know how to spell weight or height to this day, and I blame spelling tests and my short-term memory. To commit something to long-term memory, spelling has to be meaningful. Lynn encouraged his students to learn to spell through writing and questioning. You're more likely to remember how to spell beautiful if you ask how to spell it in context to a flower that you saw on your walk to school or your mom. Lynn also made reading and writing meaningful through choice and voice. Students chose what they read, they were given plenty of time to read in class. Because they got to choose, they wanted to share what they were reading with their classmates. The class began to compile short book reviews on index cards. Students soon learned that the cards had to be legible and coherent for their classmates to understand. Through this activity, students who excelled in reading and writing, often jumping multiple grade levels in one year. Lynn speaks to the value of conferencing with parents and involving them in the learning process for their child. Traditionally, parents are sidelined in their education and the relationship is more about a teacher-student. Lynn and his staff began conferencing with parents one-on-one at the beginning of the school year to find out what they wanted for their children and what they wanted from the school. He said that almost universally, parents wanted 3 things from their children's education, and it was not 3 things that you might think. Parents wanted their children to be respected as individual learners with unique talents and skills to be developed. Parents wanted their children to find a passion for learning. And parents wanted their children to express themselves freely, respect one another, and get along. Taking these expressions from the parents, Lynn identified 3 core needs, and these were outlined in turning points. Those 3 core needs were expanded upon in his book, Educating for Human Greatness, and he calls them 7 dimensions of human greatness. And they're as follows: identity, inquiry, interaction, initiative, imagination, intuition, and integrity. These are what educators, parents, and children work towards when educating for human greatness. In his book, Lynn takes the 7 dimensions and works them into 6 pivotal principles. These 6 principles are what needs to be in a learning environment to foster human greatness. Lynn starts by talking about valuing positive human diversity. That just means respecting and nurturing other people's special gifts and talents that can be developed to benefit society. And you have to draw forth potential, and Lynn speaks in terms of deficits and assets. Rather than focusing on overcoming deficits like in traditional educational settings, help children build on unique assets. Something that's very important is to respect autonomy. Respect that everyone knows what's best for their learning and growth, and most importantly that everyone is responsible for their own learning and for their own behavior. You should be inviting kids to inquiry. Let students follow personal interests and ask questions so they can seek out knowledge and wisdom. And the final 2 points are really important. The first is about teaching. You need to respect professionalism. The teachers are no longer treated as workers on an educational assembly line, but as creative professionals who know how to diagnose the needs of children, work with parents, and nurture positive diversity. And finally, we end on the point about community, and that's just about bringing parents back into the picture. Parents are a valuable and vital part of the school experience and should be not be sidelined in their child's education. And just going back to the triangle where everyone's an equal partner. At the end of his Turning Points chapter, Lynn mentions very briefly that educating for human greatness, what it might look like in practice, but he doesn't really expand on it. He doesn't kind of elaborate on his strategies. He mentions a couple different ones, and he starts off by talking about the school post office, and that's to build reading and writing skills. He follows up by talking about the Shining Stars talent development, and then the Great Brain Project. Personally, I think that all of these sound really exciting. Short of buying his book, which is really reasonably priced at $18.50 online if you're interested, I struggled at finding kind of more information about these strategies. As you can imagine, an 82-year-old has a very small digital footprint. I did find a video of Lynn speaking as a keynote at a conference within the last year, and he spoke about the Great Brain Project. When he was principal at Hillfield Elementary in Utah, he and a group of like-minded educators started this Great Brain Project. And it's about students kind of following their passion and choosing a project that they're interested in, and they can kind of follow it to a couple different ends, become specialists, experts, masterminds, and then genius about it. It's all about inquiry-based learning, and educators like Lynn encourage students to be creative in presenting the information that they've worked to compile. He talks about a girl from grade 3 who writes and composes song lyrics about her dinosaur project, which is really cool. And then Lynn also talks about this boy who is in high school and he walks around with his head down. He doesn't really engage with his peers until he successfully completed the Great Brain Project. This young man made a computer program that showed the advantage of using natural gas in cars, and his work was contracted by a major gas company to use as promotional material. And so after he finished, he kind of found confidence not only academically but socially.